right, folks, we are back here for another Criminal Minds Evolution review. Jumping into episode 9 here. This one's titled Memento Mori. Now, yes, I know I'm late. This episode is available now, but I will tell you right now that my review for episode 10, the finale, is ready to go and will release next week. And wow. But because I'm late to this one, we will talk about episode 9. Yes, it's available. Yes, this is an intense, insane episode. Go check it out. Man, I think that, like, why I love this episode so much is because I feel like Rossi has just kind of been a cameo of a character this season. Like, yeah, he had some scenes. Yeah, he had some one-liners. Yes, he was very pivotal in certain decisions and certain elements of the episode. But everybody truly did kind of have their episode focus. Like, we got a Garcia episode, we got a Tyler episode. Like, everyone got an episode. So it was about time we got one that was just strictly about Rossi. And this was the one. And I mean, this one was really, really good because sort of this cat and mouse game between Elias and Rossi now coming to a head. I could have never thought it was going to go the way it did. Like, this was insane. Tyler getting involved. This was like literally one of my favorite episodes. The next week's episode is completely nuts, but this is really one of my favorite episodes. I'm not going to tell you what I think about next week's episode in terms of where did I put it in terms of ranking of each episode this season. But this one right now, as it stands, episode 9, is if I had not seen episode 10, is one of my favorite episodes because it's just really that good. And also, I just like David so much. So, you know, I was really excited that we had an episode that focused on him mentally, just his ability, yet his almost, I won't say desperation, but like when he really wants his guy, he's going to go after his guy. And the fact that he's felt like he's been played and kind of been strung along in this cat mouse game, the fact that he knows he got him and just how determined he is, I love this episode. And I think starting off in this episode, going back to his wife's funeral, kind of really lets you know that, like, yeah, he comes off sort of militant sometimes, kind of cold, but he has a heart. And I think that, like, introducing us and reminding us to how much his wife meant to him and that softer side of him was very important because we see a soft side of him a few times in this episode. The conversation he's had with Sydney, and you know, he wants to protect Sydney, but he also absolutely flat out desperate to get his guy in Elias, but he has to play the cards right because he doesn't want Sydney to fall victim and casualty to him pushing. And in fact, he went so far to make sure he can get his guy, it completely jeopardized his whole job and his career and his reputation at the BAU. And yes, that's not a good look because, of course, they've been trying to shut down the BAU from this Sicarius investigation. But like the fact that Rossi knows he got him, he's way too far invested to turn back now. So this episode was cool because one, Elias, and like I'm gonna talk about a couple of my favorite parts of this episode. One, Elias showing up to the police station, the Seattle office. I was not expecting that. And my man was like, so by the way, you were looking for me? I got nothing to hide. Here's all my stuff. And then the fact that he reels him in by saying like, hey, I'm a fan of yours. I read your book. And the fact that he sort of used that against them, this cat and mouse, but yet this banter against one another, trying to really one up one another was amazing. How like you got, you know, somebody who's a professional, who characterizes and profiles people, a professional at that, and then you have this sinister, almost demonic person in Sicarius who uses his teaching but then flips it on him, almost psychoanalyzes him and says like, you know, you tell a lot of stuff but you don't tell everything because you wouldn't want to give all that information out, that way somebody could go out there and do stuff. So it's just interesting how these scenes were constructed with, you know, the predator versus the prey, and how that sometimes kind of get flipped. Well, in fact, it does get flipped in this episode, as we see later. Also, another couple of things. We get Rebecca and Tara having their first meet, and it's hard seeing the two of them because the fact that like Tara really wants to make this work, and Rebecca's like, I'm out. I got a new job offer, and a goodbye kiss, and you can see that she's just completely heartbroken. I just wasn't expecting that. And I mean, like, granted, like, you know, we all wish for a happy ending, but like, man, that was hard to watch. And the fact that like they have this moment together where it's like, oh, they got each other back, oh, they talking, everything's cool, and basically trying to, you know, push forward that they can open up this investigation again, and they need 48 hours to convince and get more evidence to keep the case open. And he's like, oh, you got my back, Rebecca, what's up? And then she's just like, listen, I can't do this. I got a new job offer. I'm sorry. It was hard to watch, man. It was hard to watch. So you got David and Elias, and again, the fanboy moments over the book and saying you're famous and kind of blowing his head out. I love these moments, you know. And then also on the other hand, we got Tyler and Garcia with their cuteness and whatnot. But oh, Tyler just used Garcia to get what he wants because he is clearly looking for revenge on Elias for killing his sister, and he gets his one-way ticket to Seattle. And that was wild because as Garcia in this episode discovers that she was used, and you know, this phishing attack that he used, using a recording of Garcia to pinpoint where Rossi's phone was at, the GPS to get him to Seattle. I feel bad for Garcia because obviously we want her to have love, we want her to have happiness, but yeah, at the same time, I'm kind of like, listen, man, Tyler, he would go above and beyond to ensure, even if it means hurting this woman that he clearly cares for, to get revenge for his sister. It was a wild scene. I just couldn't believe it. The other really interesting scene has to also do with Garcia and getting a flashback of Garcia and this dinner date thing. I'm gonna jump around real quick, but Garcia and Luke having dinner, and Garcia joking about, because this was taken back in February 2020. So Garcia joking about COVID, which, you know, now that we realize the degree of how serious it was, like, it's kind of like a tasteless joke, but yet all of us were kind of doing it. But they tried to date, and the fact that Garcia was kind of like, yeah, I wish you the best, friend zoned him, you're really not my type, and so on. But Luke is there for her now, and Luke is obviously, I ain't going to say obviously, but it appears that Luke still has feelings for her. So the fact that Luke does see what's happening with Garcia and Tyler is just kind of like, dang, man. And Garcia is probably going to have a little bit of guilt about that as well, too, at some point. So, but I couldn't believe that was in this episode. Like, wow, they actually showed this old bit of chemistry that they had, and like the relevance of it right now, because you thought that Garcia finally got her one, but Tyler used her in order to get his guy, in order to get the location of where, and essentially letting David do the hard work in order for him to get to where Elias Sicarius is at. So there's that. Another interesting thing was how Sicarius mentioned that he had killed 61 people last week's episode, and then this episode David mentioned, well, we know you got 52, realizing that they're short on numbers, which means, well, that means there's some more that needs to be discovered. So we have to kind of see how that goes about. I think another couple of things too is, I could go back to Luke really quick again. Luke being so awkward, as you know, Garcia is very open about her sex life and basically tells her like, hey, you know, working, and this is a messy situation. But obviously he wasn't feeling that way when he was trying to talk to her, but I'll just keep my thoughts to myself there. And because Tyler had went missing, you know, she knew something was up, but it shouldn't have taken long for her to realize that what he was doing, where he was at, and what he was going to go after. I guess she just didn't feel that she was going to fall casualty to being used in all of this. You know what I mean? But anywho, you know, as David tries to work a deal with Elias and letting the family go, and he'll swap places with him, you know, this just gets more and more crazy. And I think that, you know, as we take a look back into Elias's past, with Sydney when she was pregnant, and just all of those different things, the genuine moments that it seemed like they could actually have a normal life. It kind of butters you up about who Elias was too, much like they kind of did in the beginning with David, remembering where he used to have like soft, and now they're both cold and reserved, and probably both operating out of trauma, but like one's a killer and one's definitely like the good guy. There's no other way about it. Rossi is a good guy, and he's gonna do whatever he can to get his guy, to get this serial killer puppet master off the streets, you know. But like I said, with all that, Tyler's on the hot trails after them, and the two of them are going on a little road trip, which obviously is going to get us to the container unit where everything gets crazy. Now, before this happens, this fight scene that they have inside of the house, inside of Elias's house, I wasn't expecting that, but it was kind of nuts to see David get down and dirty and then gets mollywopped. But hey, he got some punches in, and I thought it was funny that he was like, listen, I got a gun, because he offered him wine. I got a gun in the kitchen, and why would I have to put drugs in your wine? You're a 7-year-old man. Let's go. And that was great trash talking from the two of them, but I just could not believe that we got a scene of them getting down and dirty and whatnot. And then why all this is at the same time, he definitely discredits Rossi. Like, man, I thought you were a legend, not an old man. Like, come on now, what's happening here? So it's funny. I really enjoyed the two of them in their car ride. This could easily be a spinoff if it had like, something that could be drawn out a little bit longer, because it's just really, really that good and really that funny. But yeah, like I said, Tyler shows up on the scene now. He's on revenge. Tyler gets shot, and it's not looking good for him. He's unconscious, but he's alive. While everybody knows everything's happening in Seattle, and now that Rossi, they're off the grid and they're trying to pinpoint the location, they end up where the containing unit was at. And now, because it is the underground, Sicarius, Elias, goes back to his wife and says, look, it's time to leave. And he throws on the live stream with Rossi, and seeing Dave beg for help was really hard to watch, because we don't want anything to happen to him. And yes, we got a season 2, and I doubt they would not want to bring this character back. Quite frankly, we still need other characters we want to come back. Hopefully some other stuff can happen with the casting so we can get some other folks back. But we can't lose this guy, So, but at the same time, before the season 2 announcement, I would have thought like, well, maybe if this is the final season ever, they could do something like this, and it would be completely heart-wrenching, jaw-dropping, and good for television, but just sad for the viewers. But even in this final moments, Dave begging for help, realizing that he called him by his birth name and he didn't even pick up on it as Lee. He basically lets him know by profiling him, like, there's still some good in you. You wasn't even triggered by that. So, this episode was so nuts because it's just the seesaw of emotions and events, and just this experience, shall I say, of Rossi and Elias, and from the beginning to the end, just how they're exchanging words to each other, how they're profiling one another, and again, how at points you kind of see similarities with one another. And honestly, I almost like to think that Elias kind of really does look up to Rossi. Like, granted, he had a bad childhood with his parents dying and his uncle being just completely abusive to him. You kind of think like, hey, maybe he wish he had somebody like Rossi in his life, and his life would have went in a different trajectory. And as we reflect back on his life and see him with his wife, and she's pregnant and having a house, and even though he's having these thoughts, which David completely was like, I know what that's called. You know what I mean? I think that, like, understanding that, like, he's still trying to find good in him, but this guy cannot be out on the streets. This is not good for nobody, and he's still on the run. They gotta now come and save David because he's in a dire situation. His live stream is never a good thing, as we know from previous episodes. And then what's next for Tyler? Unconscious. What's next for Garcia and Tyler? There's a lot that's really going and unfolding right now as we get ready for the finale. Because wow, what an episode is going to be, folks. But yeah, this episode is available right now. Jump in the comments. Let me know your thoughts about episode 9, Memento Mori, which, if you don't know what that means, well, first of all, I was surprised that this was the title of the episode, because usually it definitely is predicated to some form of death or somebody dying. If you've seen this title used for other series or movies or whatnot, but it's a Latin phrase for remember that you must die. And I'm like, oh my God, well, it's clearly not going to be Elias because they still need a final episode. But no, not David, but we're on the edge of our seat. This has been a wild season, and you have to brace yourself because the finale is next week, folks. But y'all jump in the comments. Y'all let me know your thoughts about this episode, and we'll be back next week for the finale. See you there.